You found it. Entry-level analyst. Bachelor's degree preferred. Training provided. So you click, and the listing opens all the way. 3 years of experience, advanced Excel, industry software, a portfolio, professional references, maybe a certification that costs more than your laptop. You scroll back to the top. Entry level. Well, maybe you just need the job below entry level. Except there is no job below entry level. There's only an internship, and somehow that wants experience too. You apply anyway. Before the upload bar even finishes, an automated email thanks you for your interest and explains that the company has decided to move forward with candidates whose experience more closely matches the role. Congratulations, you've been rejected for not already having the job you were applying to get. And after enough of those emails, it starts to feel personal. Maybe your degree was wrong. Maybe your resume is weak. Maybe everybody else learned the secret handshake while you were paying tuition. But the real question isn't why you failed to get experience before someone gave you experience. It's why entry level stopped meaning entry. Because once you understand what changed, those rejection emails start looking a lot less like a verdict on you. What changed is that more of the cost and risk of training beginners got pushed onto the beginner. Companies still need trained workers, but increasingly they don't want to carry as much of the cost of training them. So more of that work lands on you. You pay for the degree. You find the internship. You build the portfolio, teach yourself the software, and collect certificates from websites that promises employers will definitely care. Then you walk into an interview and try to prove you already know how to do the job nobody has let you do yet. That's not quite the arrangement we were sold. The promise was never that every graduate would walk straight into a great career. Plenty of people struggled, and plenty started in jobs they hated. But an entry-level job was supposed to be where you learned. You brought some education, basic ability, and a willingness to figure things out, while the employer brought supervision and enough patience to let you become useful. That still happens in some workplaces, but increasingly the beginner is expected to arrive mostly assembled. Today, entry-level describes the pay, not always the amount of experience they expect. And that's why applying for a job can start to feel like pushing against a door designed for somebody who is already on the other side. In the first quarter of 2026, unemployment among recent college graduates was around 5.7%, while their underemployment rate was 41.5%. That means more than 4 in 10 recent graduates who had jobs were working in positions that typically didn't require their degree. That doesn't mean college is worthless for everyone, but for some people, a degree that leaves them in debt and unable to enter the field may not have been worth the cost. What these numbers do show is that the path from college into degree-level work is far less reliable than people are often told. And this problem doesn't only affect people fresh out of college. You might be returning to work after caring for a child or parent. You might be trying to move from retail into an office. You can have 10 years of experience and still become a beginner the moment you step into a new field. The gate is still very literal. It doesn't care that you managed a restaurant if the listing says project coordinator. And it doesn't care that you spent years solving customer problems if your resume doesn't use the phrase the software is searching for. Potential is difficult to sort, but keywords are easy. And that became a much bigger problem once applying for jobs became effortless. You can apply from your phone in a few minutes, but so can everybody else. A company posts one opening, and before lunch it may be staring at hundreds of applications. That sounds efficient until you're one of the hundreds. The employer gets a mountain of resumes, and then it needs a fast way to make that mountain smaller. A Harvard Business School report, based on a survey of employers in the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany, found that 63% used recruiting management systems. Among those employers, more than 90% used the systems to rank candidates or make an initial cut for middle and high-skill positions. That doesn't mean a robot personally rejected every application you've ever sent. It means experience requirements can become a convenient filter, whether or not 3 years is truly necessary for the role. 3 years is easy to count. The ability to learn quickly isn't.
So companies measure what the software can see, and then they complain that they can't find anyone. But the experience requirement is only one part of it, because the hiring process has also moved earlier, sometimes much earlier. An internship used to help you stand out. Now it can feel like the application before the application. In 2026, the National Association of Colleges and Employers reported that participating employers converted an average of 63.1% of eligible interns from the 2024 to 25 class into full-time hires. That's great for the interns who get those opportunities. And while it doesn't tell us what share of all entry-level jobs interns fill, it does show how powerful internships have become as a direct pipeline into full-time work. So by the time some public openings appear, another candidate may already know the manager. They know the software, the clients, which meetings are pointless, and which pointless meetings are somehow mandatory. The job may be open to the public, but the relationship isn't. And getting into that pipeline isn't equally easy for everyone. Some students have to work to pay rent. Some go to school later in life, and some are changing careers. Some can't move to an expensive city for a low-paid internship and just hope it turns into something. The first rung is still there. It's just sitting behind another gate now. At the same time, another shift made training beginners more complicated: remote work. Remote work helped millions of people. It removed commutes, expanded job options, and made some lives more manageable. You can't lean over and ask the person beside you what a strange email actually means when nobody is beside you. You can schedule a call, you can share a screen, or send a message asking whether they have 5 minutes. They don't. So the 5-minute question becomes a meeting next Thursday. A 2026 New York Fed analysis estimated that remote work could explain 64% of the increase in unemployment among young college graduates between 2017 to 19 and 2022 to 2024. The researchers argued that distributed work can make mentoring and training less convenient, which can push employers toward people who need less help. That doesn't mean remote work caused the entry-level crisis. It means something that worked well for established workers may have created a new problem for people still trying to become established. The company keeps the benefits of remote work while expecting you to arrive already trained. AI didn't create the disappearing entry-level job, but it may be adding pressure to a system that was already leaning away from beginners. A lot of early career work is made up of smaller tasks: the first draft, the basic research, the simple spreadsheet, the customer question that has been asked 100 times, or the piece of code nobody wants to write. That work may not look important, but it's where you learn. Nobody begins by making the biggest decision in the room. You start with work that can be checked, and you make mistakes while those mistakes are still cheap. You also get to watch how experienced people handle the parts nobody taught in school. Stanford researchers found that workers ages 22 to 25 in the most AI-exposed occupations experienced a 16% relative decline in employment after generative AI became widely used. Older, more experienced workers in the same occupations were more stable, but the evidence is still mixed. A separate New York Fed analysis found that the slowdown had already begun before ChatGPT, and it wasn't limited to beginners. In the most AI-exposed fields, companies were posting fewer junior and senior openings at roughly the same rate. So AI didn't build the maze, but it may be making some of the walls higher. The immediate concern isn't necessarily that software can replace an entire profession. It's that software may be able to handle enough beginner tasks for a company to decide it needs fewer beginners. Then, a few years later, those same employers start wondering where all the experienced workers went.
Too many companies want experienced people without investing in the beginners who eventually become them. So you're told to fix the problem on your side. Rewrite the resume, optimize the profile, tailor every application, network without sounding like you need anything, and build a portfolio full of work nobody paid you to make. Complete an assessment before talking to a real person, then create a personal brand that says established professional while you're still applying for permission to become one. A better resume can improve your odds. A real connection can open a door, and a good portfolio can prove that you know what you're doing. But the advice becomes misleading when it acts like the only reason the gate is locked is that you formatted the key incorrectly. You can improve your application and still compete against somebody with 5 years of experience who was recently laid off. You can learn the software and still be rejected because you never used it in a paid position. You can complete the certificate and discover the certificate is now considered basic. You can do everything responsibly and still lose to someone who already received the opportunity you're trying to earn. And that's where the risk transfer becomes obvious. The employer gets to wait for proof, while you pay to produce it. The employer protects itself from a bad hire, while you absorb months without a paycheck. And because the whole process happens through software, silence, and generic emails, all of it starts to feel like a judgment about your worth. You begin asking whether you're employable. But that first screening step wasn't built to measure your full potential. It was built to shrink a pile. The biggest cost isn't one rejection, it's the delay. You delay moving out, you delay saving, and you delay leaving the job that pays the bills but leads nowhere. Most of all, you delay becoming experienced because experience is the exact thing you were applying to gain. Then the gap gets longer, and eventually the gap itself becomes one more reason to reject you. Of course you get tired. You stop writing passionate cover letters to companies that will spend less time reading them than you spent changing the company name. You become suspicious of urgently hiring listings that have been online for months. So you start applying to jobs that pay less, and somehow those want 3 years of experience too.
After a while, it gets harder to keep treating every application like it might lead somewhere. Not because you don't want to work, but because you've spent months doing everything you were told and still can't get close enough to start. The problem isn't that you won't climb. It's that the first rung keeps getting moved. So go back to the listing. Entry-level analyst, 3 years required. The contradiction is the answer. The real reason you can't get an entry-level job is that too many employers now use those jobs to sort through a giant applicant pool for people someone else already trained, rather than training people who are actually entering the field. Not every company does this. Some employers still train people well, some managers hire for potential, and some internships genuinely open doors. But the larger incentive has changed. Training increasingly looks like a cost, screening is easier to automate, and becoming employable has turned into something you're expected to finance before you ever earn a salary. So no, every rejection isn't proof that you picked the wrong degree, missed a keyword, or failed to work hard enough. Sometimes you're qualified to begin, but the company is looking for somebody who already finished. What's the most absurd requirement you've seen on an entry-level listing? Put it in the comments. And if you think companies only make these mistakes when they're hiring, wait until you see what happens when they start cutting. Watch this next to see why some employers are now trying to undo layoffs they once called necessary.